Thank you very much. And please excuse my voice. I want to thank Gene Howe again. Let's give him a big, big applause. And Gene Howe is one of 7 water keepers that we now have working around China. Almost all of them are fighting coal. I want to introduce another keeper who's we got in this area. Let me just read this because we got so many of them. But fighting coal in this area, we got the Willamette, we have the Tualatin, the Rogue River, the Klamath River Keeper, the Columbia River Keeper, the Cook Inlet Keeper, the Spokane River Keeper, the Puget Sound Keeper, North Sound Bay Keeper, the Coos Water Keeper, and Lake Pend Oreille in Idaho. All of them are fighting coal plants or transfer stations in their areas. Now I'm going to bring up somebody else just to show you what he looks like. We have one of the leaders, the Canadian River Keepers. We have about a whole lot of river water keepers in Canada, and this is Mark Madison, who's our first Madison, who was our first. And he pioneered a lot of the laws in Canada, the Fisheries Act, for suing the big polluters. But a couple of years ago, we used Canadian law, him and me, to sue Detroit Edison, which was a utility in Detroit that was burning coal. And the mercury from the coal was coming over and poisoning people in Canada. And when we sued them, they said the same thing that all the coal companies have been telling us for 30 years when we tell them, your mercury is poisoning our local people.
I don't have a hand.
They all say the same thing. They say, that mercury in the fish is not coming from our plants, it's coming from China. So, and this is what the industry says. And we now know that the fish and the Cascades, that the salmon in Portland and up and down the coast are contaminated. Every single salmon on the coast of the Northwest United States and in Vancouver has dangerous levels of mercury in its flesh. We now know by scientific proof that that mercury is coming from Canada, from China. So why are we taking this coal, American coal, sending it over to China so that they can send us back the acid rain and that they can send us back the mercury to poison our fish? That's something we shouldn't be doing. Well, you can sit down now, Mark. I just wanted to make you see what you're looking for. Coal is crime. And I've been fighting the coal industry for 30 years. Now, a lot of the coal that you're going to see coming through here, if you let them get away with this crime, is going to come from the Powder River Basin, and it's going to come from up in Canada. The coal that I've been fighting has been mainly in Appalachia. And I'm going to tell you what I've seen in Appalachia. Because the same thing that happened to Appalachia is what's going to happen here if you let coal into your community. Because wherever coal comes, it's toxic. And it's toxic not just for adults, it's toxic for children, and it's toxic for our democracy, and it's toxic for all of the values that make America an exemplary nation. Coal is the enemy of our country, and it's the enemy of everything we stand for. And if you don't believe that, I tell you, go to West Virginia and see what it's like in coal country, where they don't have democracy anymore, literally. Where there's whole communities, coal says, well, we're bringing prosperity to the state. But just the opposite, which is what they'll tell you here. They'll say, oh yeah, if you let us bring the coal through here, we'll bring you jobs and we'll bring you prosperity, and that's a lie. And that's what they've told for 100 years. They've told the people of West Virginia. My father used to say about West Virginia, it's the richest state in the nation because of the value of the coal beneath the land, but it has the poorest people of any state except for Mississippi. Coal doesn't share its wealth. It keeps it for itself, and it makes a few people billionaires by impoverishing everybody else. And anybody who touches coal gets poisoned by it. And you don't just get sick. It poisons your democracy, it poisons your community, it poisons your values. What I would say to you is coal is crime. Do not let it come through this community, because it's... It's not just going to poison the people who happen to have the misfortune of living near the railroad tracks. It's going to poison everybody it touches. It's going to poison your city council. It's going to poison your mayor. It's going to poison the state legislature. It's going to poison the governor, and it's going to poison your children, your groundwater, the air you breathe, and it's going to poison the whole and distort the whole economic system here. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in West Virginia, and I've seen in coal country in West Virginia. I've driven through 30 communities in West Virginia that were once thriving communities with union halls and with churches and with schools, and there's nothing left. The landscapes have been empty. The coal companies come in and they say, we're going to mine. We can't have you here because the explosions, because the dust. We don't want you. We're going to poison your water. We're going to poison your well. We don't want to pay you the damages, so we're just going to pay you to move. And when we pay you, you're going to sign a contract. And the contract says that you can never move back into this county again. And that's the contracts that they sign. So the people, you can drive through coal country in West Virginia to towns like Whitesville, and they're just, the only thing left are boarded up union halls, boarded up homes, and boarded up churches and schools, etc. The agways are closed, the grocery stores are closed, there is no economy left. That is the legacy of coal, and it's the legacy of coal everywhere it goes. 2 years ago, I had a lawsuit in West Virginia, and I've been fighting the coal industry in that state for 3 decades. And I had a lawsuit in West Virginia, and we won the biggest judgment, and it's a 6.5-week jury trial. We won the biggest judgment in the history of the state. I went back about a year ago to appeal that judgment in front of the West Virginia Supreme Court, which incidentally is owned by the coal industry and which cut the judgment down to essentially nothing, so that the people, the 8,000 people who had been poisoned, got essentially nothing, and the lawyers hardly got paid. So, which I was also pissed at that. But as I was leaving the state, I was driving on a road it was like driving on a cushion or a skateboard park. It was smooth and it was nice, and this is unusual in West Virginia, because West Virginia, like I say, they don't put money into any infrastructure that doesn't benefit the coal industry. And I said to the driver, why is this road so smooth? And he said, because there's 22 inches of asphalt on this road. And every inch of asphalt cost the taxpayer millions of dollars per lane, per mile. And I knew why there was 22 inches of asphalt, because the coal trucks weigh 90,000 pounds, and they will pulverize a less robust road. But it's not the coal industry that's paying for that road. It's the people of the state, and it's the federal taxpayer. So when coal says that it's cheap and it's clean, we know they're lying when they say they're clean, but they're also lying when they say they're cheap. If they really had to internalize their costs, if they had to pay the true costs that they are charging to the rest of us, they would be the most catastrophically expensive way to boil a pot of water that's ever been devised. They could not compete in the fields of free market capitalism. The only way they compete is by subverting democracy, escaping the application of the law, and then winning themselves, corrupting the political process to bring in huge subsidies that allow them to compete against wind and solar in a marketplace with the appearance that they're actually competitive. They aren't. I'm building right now a solar thermal plant in Southern California, 2.7 gigawatts, the biggest power plant in our country. It costs $3 billion per gigawatt. It takes us 3 years to build. A coal plant takes 10 years. It'll cost $3 billion. It'll cost $3 billion a gigawatt to build. A coal plant costs $3 billion a gigawatt. But once you build our plant, it's free energy forever, because the photons are hitting the earth every day for free, and all we have to do is build the infrastructure to harvest them and put them in the line. Once you build that coal plant for the same $3 billion, now your big costs are just beginning. Because now you got to go cut down the Appalachian Mountains, ship them across the country in the rails, warp the railroads, pulverize the roads, burn the coal, poison everybody in our country. Now, when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. Last August, the National Academy of Science released a 10-year report that said that every freshwater fish in America now has dangerous levels of mercury in its flesh. We are living, every fish, and that mercury is coming primarily, about 85% of it, from coal-burning power plants. We are living in our country in a science fiction nightmare today, where my children and the children of most Americans can now no longer engage in the seminal, primal activity of American youth, which is to go fishing with their father or mother in the local fishing hole and then come home and safely eat the fish. Because the coal industry paid off the politicians, subverted our democracy, and got to poison us, which is illegal, and steal the commons, privatize the commons from the rest of us. According to CDC, 1 out of every 6 American women now has dangerous levels of mercury in her womb. And there are 640,000 children born in this country every year who've been exposed to levels of mercury high enough to lose them at least 1 IQ point permanently, and subject them to a grim inventory of other diseases, including autism, blindness, mental retardation, heart, liver, and kidney disease. I spend a lot of time fishing and I eat the fish. I got my mercury levels tested recently, and my levels are 10 times what EPA considers safe. I was told by Dr. David Carpenter, who's the national authority on mercury contamination, that a woman with my levels of mercury in her womb would have children with cognitive impairment, permanent brain damage. I said to him, "You mean she might have?" And he said, no, the science is very clear today. Her children would have some level of permanent neurological injury. Probably, he estimated, at my levels, a permanent IQ loss in those kids of 5 to 7 points. Well, today, according to CDC, there are 640,000 children born in this country every year who've been exposed to dangerous levels of mercury in their mother's wombs. And that is a cost of coal that they don't tell you about when they say, oh, it's only 11 cents a kilowatt hour. If you go home today and look at as George Bush called it, the Google, you can go to EPA's website and you can find about a half dozen peer-reviewed studies that are published on that website by the Harvard School of Public Health and others that say that ozone and particulates, which is another class of pollutants from coal-burning power plants, cost this country $345 billion annually in healthcare costs. We could pay for Obamacare half a dozen times over just by eliminating those 2 pollutants from coal-burning power plants. According to these publications, there are between 47 and 60,000 Americans who die every year from breathing ozone and particulates from those power plants. That's 20 times the number of people who were killed in the World Trade Center attacks, but not just once, year after year after year. And that's 10 million asthma attacks, 1 million lost workdays. These are parts of the cost of coal that they don't tell you about when they say, oh, it's only 11 cents a kilowatt hour. They're not telling you that out of your other pocket, you're paying $345 billion and burying 60,000 Americans every year. Yep. If a foreign enemy, a foreign nation, did to our country what the coal industry does to us every day, we would consider it an act of war. Now, I live 2 hours south of the Adirondack Mountains. This is the oldest protected wilderness on the face of the earth. It's been protected as forever wild since 1888. We had a right, the American citizens, to believe that generations of our children would be able to enjoy those pristine landscapes unspoiled. But today, 1/5 of the lakes in the Adirondacks is sterilized from acid rain, which has also destroyed the forest cover on the peaks, the high peaks of the Appalachians from Georgia all the way up into northern Quebec. These are private